Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week number 2 of Carleton University's See You at Home series. And we are on day number 4 on Thursday with today's session on the awards and financial aid topic. My name is Jaleel Alab, and I work for the Carleton University Recruitment Office. I graduated from Carleton in 2019 with my degree in engineering, and I grew up here in the city of Ottawa, so I had a ton of experience with Carleton, both, someone coming in as a prospective student, as a student, and then as an alumni right now, and now a staff member. And so I and all of my teammates have a ton of insight that we'd love to share with all of you folks today to learn a little bit more about what makes our campus so beautiful and so special. And we'd like to begin by again acknowledging that the Carleton University campus is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. We are always striving to continue to improve our relationships with all of our different staff, students, and faculty of different backgrounds to continue to ensure that our campus is safe and a welcoming environment for everyone. So, as I mentioned before, we are in our See You at Home series, and today we are in the middle of the week focusing on different resources that students can take advantage of. If you tuned in earlier during the week, you would have seen that we had different events about, the Student Experience Office, about residents, about the Center for Student Academic Support. If you tune in tomorrow, it'll be about the Paul Menton Center for Students with Disabilities. But the spotlight today is on awards and financial aid, and this is definitely one of the big topics that I usually hear students want to discuss with us when they're coming in to post-secondary. There's a lot of different things that people are wondering about with regards to scholarships and bursaries and provincial funding as well. And thankfully, we are joined today with my amazing colleague, Sam Holstrom from the awards department, who's going to give us all a little bit more insider info about all these amazing things that we have in regards to awards. So I'll let you take it away, Sam, to let our viewers know a bit more about our scholarships, bursaries, and other types of funding.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jalil. So as Jalil mentioned, my name is Sam. I'm at the Awards and Financial Aid Office as the Awards and Financial Aid Assistant. Today, I'm just going to go over some of the big sources of funding that we have at Carleton. There are 3 different types I'm going to discuss. Scholarships and bursaries, which are awards issued by Carleton to students to help offset the cost of your school. I'll also be covering government financial aid, and I'm going to touch a little bit on our main one, which is Osap, but then also acknowledging that there are some out-of-province students, and we do have some out-of-province information. So that's kind of roughly what I'm going to go over. The first thing I'm going to touch on are internal scholarships and awards. Now, I specify internal because there's often a little bit of confusion as to what internal versus external means. Internal scholarships and awards are offered by Carleton for Carleton students. So your main contact, if you've received any of these, is going to be the awards office. Now, there are 2 types. Scholarships, which are based off of your academic performance. You get assessed for these generally when you first enter into Carleton, and they're called Entrant Scholarships. So as part of your admissions application, you would have submitted transcripts that show your performance in high school, and the Entrant Scholarships are based off of those transcripts. So they'll be included as part of your offer admission, and you don't need to accept them separately. If you accept your offer, you'll automatically accept your entrance scholarship. We will be assessing those sort of in an ongoing fashion. So if you have any questions about sort of which awards you received or what's included in your offer of admission, please feel free to reach out to us. That being said, there's some important information in your scholarship letter and your offer of admission that go over your eligibility criteria to ensure that you're registering in courses appropriately when it comes to that point. The entrance scholarship range from $4,000 to $16,000, again, depending on your admissions average. And those are released as $1,000 per year for 4 years, up to $4,000 per year for 4 years. In addition to those entrance scholarships, we do still have a handful of other entrance scholarships available. These ones will require an application, so I really encourage you to go onto the awards office website to review those eligibility criteria and to find the applications themselves. If you have any questions when you're filling out those applications, feel free to reach out to us. Another big award that we have are our entrance bursaries. These are meant to supplement your main source of funding. So you get assessed for these by submitting the entrance bursary application, which is on Carleton Central. And to have access to that application, you need to have been offered admission to an undergraduate degree program at Carleton for September. You are a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or protected person of Canada, and you demonstrate financial need. And the big part for entrance bursaries is that you show that you're applying for some form of government financial assistance, or if you're applying for financial assistance or for funding through a financial institution. So that can look like a line of credit from a bank or even a personal loan. And as I said, you'll want to submit the application on Carleton Central. The deadline for this is June 30th, so there's still some time to do it, and you assess them on an ongoing basis, so there's not a specific date that you're going to be notified. We will be assessing them on a rolling basis. If you miss that June 30th deadline for whatever reason, we can still assess you for a bursary. It just means that you'll need to submit an application in September, and that's the general undergraduate bursary. In addition to specifically scholarships and bursaries, if you're a student who is studying with a permanent disability, there are some specific awards for you as well. I would encourage you to check on our website. We do have specific websites for addressing and listing all of those awards. Likewise, if you're a student or an Indigenous student, we also have some awards specifically for those individuals as well, and I would encourage you to look at those applications. They vary in eligibility criteria, so it's really important to read the little blurbs that we put on our website and complete the application directly. Now, that was the internal scholarships and awards that we have. There are also something known as external scholarships. We get a lot of questions about where funding, like where there's some extra funding not through the entrance bursary or the entrance scholarship process. The majority of those are considered external scholarships. These are awards from organizations out in the community. So if you have, one thing we've seen common is if your high school has offered you a scholarship upon graduation, that's considered an external scholarship. If you've received an award from a volunteer organization, that's also considered an external scholarship. We do link on our website to a couple databases, specifically Universities Canada, Scholarships Canada are a couple of them. In those databases, you can filter by eligibility criteria and find those awards out in the community. If you come across one you want to apply for or have some questions about, please contact the organization directly that's offering that award. If you've received one of these awards, you'll want to connect with the issuing body. So that's the organization, your high school, as to how they will be issuing that award to you. Sometimes they come in checks, sometimes they come in electronic funds transfer, and there might be some logistics that we need to do in order to make sure that award goes where you want it to go. So you'll want to connect with them to see how they're issuing it, and then you can connect with us for how we can make sure it gets applied the way you want it to. So that's external scholarships. I know it's quite brief, but there are so many of them out there, and I really encourage you to start looking at applying for some of those. Now to move on to the largest form of funding that is available to students. So that's OSAP and out-of-province funding. Before I touch on OSAP, because it's going to take up the majority of the time for this, I want to mention out-of-province directly. So if you're attending Carleton from out-of-province, you will need to follow the instructions on your province or territory's financial aid website. We link to those websites directly on our website, and it's important that you follow them because you're acting as a liaison between the funding body and the school. So we can confirm your enrollment and make sure that that the funding body knows that you are attending school and your course load and making sure that's all good. But you really do need to make sure that you're keeping on top of those applications, because we don't get to see those applications on our end. So we'll need to make sure that we can talk with you and make sure everything's good to go for the school year. Additionally, if you're a US student, you are eligible to receive direct student loans, and we list a step-by-step process on our website for that as well. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Now for OSAP. The Ontario Student Assistance Program is the provincial financial aid program for Ontario, and it offers grants and loans to help Ontario students pay for their university education. They use a number of factors to determine eligibility and values, including tuition, course load, financial resources of the student, and the student's family's resources as well. The four main financial resources that we use to determine your entitlement amount are your expected parental contribution. This is based on the prior tax year. So for the upcoming tax year, that's our academic year, we'll be using the 2020 tax year. So it's important that if your parents haven't submitted their taxes, that you ask that they please do so we can assess you properly. This also takes into account the size of the family and the number of children that are attending post-secondary simultaneously. So if you have a sibling that's going to be attending at the same time or is finishing up their program, the OSAP application will take into consideration the additional weight on your family for that child going as well. The second main common financial resource is your expected award income. Now this is both internal and external. The good thing is if you've received an internal award, so your entrance scholarship or your entrance bursary, you don't need to report that. We'll do it for you. So you don't need to put your entrance scholarship on your OSAP application or your entrance bursary on your application. If you are receiving any awards from those external awards I was mentioning, you'll need to list those on your application, as we won't necessarily know that you've received those yet. It's important to be accurate in listing those because it can impact your entitlement. So we want to make sure that everything's being reported accurately. The third financial resource we use is your expected employment income. So if you're working part-time or if you're working part-time during the school year, you'll have some prompts to fill out that information, and those are estimates. If at any point you acquire a part-time job while you're in school, we'll need to update your income on the OSAP application as well. And the fourth financial resource we use is liquid assets. And these ones, this is a weird kind of wording, but it basically just means anything under your name. So significant savings. It doesn't include things like cars. If you are unsure about any of these sources of funding or income or anything like that, reach out to us and we can kind of clarify that for you. Sometimes we get some very interesting questions, so we just want to make sure that we report those accurately because we are assessing for what you're eligible for. Now, applying for OSAP is actually a two-stage process. The first stage you'll want to do is actually to set up your OSAP profile. So you can do that right now. You can go onto the OSAP website and register. You'll connect your SIN to your profile, and then you'll also be setting up your email and potentially linking your OUAC account with the OSAP account. We recommend that you do this because it makes the second part of the submission process easier, which is submitting the actual OSAP application. The application is going to open, we hope, late May, early June. We'll be getting the dates, the actual dates, fairly soon, but the ministry hasn't released them to us yet. But if you set up your OSAP account and connect it with your OUAC and set up your email, then once the application becomes available, you'll get the first notification. So you'll probably know on or before us at the school here. So what we also recommend in this second one, if you've connected with your OUAC with your OSAP account, you will have all of the different programs that you've applied for in OUAC will automatically populate and start applications for those. So these are called Stub Applications. They're just basically the program, the school, and the stream that you've applied for, and it'll just auto-populate all of that. You do need to go in and make sure that the information's accurate and complete the applications, but it helps you kind of get kick-started on that. What we recommend for that too is if you have made a decision on where you're going to go and you see these stub applications populate, you can go in and close those, the ones that you're not going to be attending. And what that allows us to do at the awards office is it allows us to focus on the application that is most accurate, and it makes it easier for us to release funding later on in September. So you'll just want to keep that in mind when you're applying. As part of your OSAP application, you'll be submitting supporting documentation. You will know which documents you need once you've submitted your initial application itself. We recommend when you submit your documents that you upload them directly to your OSAP applications. We do have directions on how to go about doing this on our website. And the reason we recommend doing that is it makes the processing a little faster. It means less paper applications that have to be mailed around, and it makes ensuring that the actual documents are accurate. So if you've uploaded something and there's a typo or there's something in there that needs to be fixed or updated, what we can just do is you can update the new document and then you upload it again, and it makes it much faster for us to approve that document. So that kind of leads me to where awards is in this whole OSAP process. We're in every single step of it. So if you have any questions when you're registering, when you've started to submit your application, when you have those documents that you're not quite sure what to report, what to upload, we can help in all of those situations. Additionally, after you've actually received your funding, if there's any updates to your application, we would be the main point of contact for that. So you can send us an email and we will go ahead and advise you on what to update and where to go from there. Once you've submitted your application, the assessments will run usually middle of June, and you'll receive an entitlement amount. It's important to distinguish estimate versus entitlement. Estimate is your sort of ballpark range for how much you're going to be receiving from OSAP, but the actual amount that you're going to be receiving is known as the entitlement, and this will be grant and loans. We would recommend that you complete your applications by June 30th. This will allow sufficient processing time so that we can ensure your documents are correct, ensure your entitlement is accurate, and advise you on if there's anything that looks wildly outrageous. So I have a couple of tips for you to make sure that your application processes quickly and efficiently. You don't need to wait until you've made a decision on which school you're going to attend before applying, before completing your application, before putting your documents in. You can do that all before you've decided on where you want to go. You'll want to go ahead and complete those whenever you want. Well, recommended before June 30th, but you want to complete those and then upload the documents to your OSAP application. Please, when you're uploading your documents, do use a document scanning application. This makes sure that the documents are small enough so that they upload properly. Once you know which university and which program you're going to be attending, close all of the other applications. Again, this makes it easier in September for us to release funding. If you want to get an idea of how much funding you may be eligible for, you can still use the estimator that's currently up on the OSAP website. It's accurate for last year's OSAP program, but there aren't a lot of changes that have been made to the program over the past year, so it's still reasonably accurate. But again, to know exactly how much you're going to be receiving, it's best to submit that application and wait for the entitlement to be calculated. So that wraps up OSAP. I'll hand it back over to Jalil if we have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. There's a lot to go over right now, and there's a ton of questions coming in from our students. So we'll just go through them one by one. So the first question that we have up here, Sam, someone's wondering, are there scholarships after first year? Because, you know, you have scholarships coming in. Can they continue while they are in university?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do have some scholarships that are available. These are tend to be known as departmental awards. So they are determined based on the eligibility set by the department. So after you've completed your first year, or kind of like March of your first year, you can go to your department and ask for the eligibility criteria, and then there may be applications depending on which award you go for, but it's best to connect with your department about those.
Awesome, perfect. So another question is kind of specific, but off the top of your head, do you happen to know what scholarships we offer to international students, specifically those going into engineering?
So your scholarships would be automatically assessed when you submit your admissions application. So it's best if you're considering Carleton to submit that, because it will be based directly on your admissions average and which program you go into. So it is a general answer, I'm sorry, but that's the best way for us to determine which awards you're eligible for.
Okay, awesome. So we have another question that might be fairly common. So someone's wondering that, do they have to get their final grade sent to us by June 15th to qualify for an entrance scholarship? Because if they improve their marks after June 15th, like at June 30th, will they be reviewed?
That is a little bit of a specific question. There are some things I would want to know about your specific situation. So I'd recommend sending us an email if that's your situation. We will be reviewing some admissions averages, but I want to make sure I give the accurate information for that individual.
Okay, awesome. And again, you can email us, and if one of my colleagues could put the email here in the chat, that'd be amazing. So we have another question that a lot of people kind of have in their mind. Are they allowed to apply for a bursary even if they have a part-time job? Or maybe if you could kind of explain like who generally qualifies as having financial need for a bursary, Sam?
Yeah, so as part of the bursary application, there's a budget sheet. So this is going to go over your resources and your expenses. Resources being OSAP, part-time jobs, all of those sources of funding that I've mentioned previous. And then your expenses are going to be rent, residence, tuition, all of those things. The basic thing we look at is, are you receiving financial assistance? Again, mentioned OSAP, financial institutions, that sort of thing. And if you have financial need, basically looking at whether your resources are going to be sufficient to cover your expenses. So that's what the budget sheet helps us look at, is whether your reported resources are going to be sufficient to help you meet your expenses. So it's kind of a general look at that.
Awesome. So another OSAP question right here. Do students have to apply for OSAP every single year, or is it just once?
Every year. So the initial application will probably be the most lengthy because it's setting up your profile and doing all of those fun little bits. Years like the following years, so if you're in your second year and you apply for OSAP again, you'll notice that there'll be less things to fill out because a lot of it's going to be pre-populated from your first year. And you will need to submit documents, but it may change. So you may not have to submit the exact same documents. You may have to. It's really going to be depending on your situation. And we do recommend submitting your OSAP application early every year because it just helps to make sure that your funding's on time for school.
For sure. So we have an out of province question here. Someone is saying, I live in Quebec, so I have applied for financial assistance through the Quebec government. I'm wondering if I would qualify for a Carleton bursary if I don't already qualify for a bursary from Quebec.
Yes. So the funding from Quebec is completely separate from Carleton. What we would look at then is what I mentioned a little bit earlier. Are you applying for aid? Which, if you've already applied, you are. And then if you have financial need based on that budget sheet. So you would still qualify.
Okay, great. If you could remind us again, another question, Sam, when does registration open? I believe they're intending registration for OSAP. When does that open?
Yeah, so we don't have a specific date yet. We're anticipating end of May, but as I mentioned, we would recommend that you go into the OSAP website and set up your profile so that when it is available, you'll get an email, and then you don't have to kind of keep checking in and wondering when it'll happen. They'll send you notifications then.
Okay, and so many more OSAP questions coming in. So someone would like to know, which department should I contact if I'm locked out of my OSAP account? Would they be contacting awards or OSAP directly?
So it depends. If it's your first year that you are taking OSAP, you'll want to actually connect with the ministry because we won't have the necessary identifying questions to verify you are you. And so we won't be able to actually go through the OAN reset process. So you can go on to the OSAP website and search for how to go about contacting the ministry for that. If you I feel like most people here are new students, but if you do have some previous Carleton experience, then you can contact us. Or if you are in October or something, you're trying to log in and you notice that you're locked out, again, you can contact us at that point because we'll have some verifying information.
Okay, awesome. So another question is kind of like asking about what life would be like on campus. So how much amount of money can someone expect to gain from working on campus? To like, I don't know how that would apply for applying for financial aid.
Yeah, so it's going to be dependent on which job you have, your wage at that job, and a variety of different types of situational questions. So it can vary greatly. If you get a job on campus and you've already submitted your OSAP application, let us know and we can kind of look into getting an estimate on your OSAP application. And if you I think that's the big thing with how it relates to financial aid. Is specifically with OSAP, if you've already submitted a bursary application and you get a job on campus later on after your bursary's been released, you don't need to let us know. The bursary's been released and was based on your financial need at that point in time. It's still valid.
Okay, fair. So super duper important question here for you, Sam, because it's a common one. If we want to take a loan with a bank, would we need to include scholarships in OSAP if we have those? And similarly, like for taxes, would you include it yourself for OSAP? And
so if you're taking a loan from bank and getting OSAP, is that, I feel like I'm not sure if I understand the question fully, but
I think that's what they're trying to get at. That
okay.
if you already have scholarships and OSAP that are like automatically applied, like entrance scholarships already on your Carleton offer, and then you want to take a loan with the bank, would you need to include scholarships and bursaries if you have those? No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I think I know what they're trying to get at. When they're applying for OSAP or other types of financial aid, if they already have loans from the bank, right? Would that qualify as like assets that they need to declare? I think that's what they're trying to get at.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, if you have been guaranteed those loan funding, you will want to indicate it on the bursary application because it does qualify you. So if you haven't received OSAP and you're only going for a loan from the bank, then that would help qualify you for a bursary. Whereas if you didn't show that loan funding, you wouldn't necessarily qualify because you don't have that prerequisite. For OSAP purposes, you would want to make sure you indicate savings. Loans aren't savings. It's something completely different, right? You do still need to pay back loans. So it's adding extra debt on top of what OSAP's going to be assessing you for. So, I mean, it depends on how much that loan is going to be. Like there are some things that we'll want to consider, but you don't need to necessarily report it on your OSAP application. You would on your bursary application.
Okay, awesome. So we have a few other questions here that are kind of like a bit off topic about fee payment and things like this. If you maybe want to answer them, can you resume or maybe begin by paying half of the tuition fees? I think what they're trying to say is like when it comes time to do fee payment, can you only pay half?
I mean, it depends. I think those questions are best answered by the student accounts office, to be honest, because it's gonna impact your whether a late fee is charged to your account. There are some other things that go on there. So if you have specific questions regarding fee payment and how to go about doing that and all of the intricacies that go along with that, you might want to speak with student accounts or to get clarification on those questions.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So there's a lot of questions here. I'll try to focus on the ones specifically, again, more oriented towards awards. So is RESP considered financial aid?
It is, meaning you will want to indicate it on your OSAP application. It is not for bursary funding. So if you're getting RESPs, you'll want to still apply for OSAP if you'd like to be considered for a bursary, because RESPs they're not a loan. They're not additional financial aid. They're considered savings. So that's where the distinction's made between RESPs.
Okay, awesome. So with regard to the entrance scholarships, someone would just like to confirm, are they only applied once you accept the offer? Like, do you have to do anything yourself to get an entrance scholarship?
No, so they're automatically assessed when you submit an application to Carleton. And then once you've accepted your offer of admission, your entrance scholarship is automatically accepted as well. And then the way it's applied is, let's say you have the $4,000 scholarship, which is released $1,000 every year for 4 years. You'll get half of that $1,000 going towards your fall term and half going towards winter. Until they're applied, they'll be listed on your student account as pending. So that's what that'll look like. It doesn't mean they've been applied yet. So if you see pending and it's sort of middle of the fall, there might be a reason why it's pending and not actually issued to your account. That's why I mentioned to look at your letter, your scholarship letter, because for the most part, if a scholarship hasn't been applied, it's because you're not fully registered in your courses. So scholarships tend, for the most part, again, there are some exceptions, so it's best to look at your letter. But for the most part, scholarships are issued when you fully registered in 4.0 credits, roughly 4 classes per term. But again, there are some exceptions, so make sure you look at your letter.
Okay, awesome. So a question about international students. We mentioned the entrance scholarships, but they're wondering if there's anything other specifically for international students that they qualify for.
So that's the big one for first-year students, for first-year international students, are our entrance scholarships. After your first year at Carleton, you become eligible to apply for bursaries. So that's where we would look for additional aid. As well, you become potentially eligible for some of those departmental awards I mentioned. So it's after your first year that a lot more funding opportunities open up.
Awesome. And our last question at the moment that we have, for out-of-province students, do they use OSAP with an Ontario education number, or do they go through their own provincial body? If you'd like to clarify that again, Sam.
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So it's based on your provincial residency. So provincial residency is determined by the number of months you've lived in a province. The Ontario residency requirements, and I'm fairly certain it's for all of the provinces, is you have to have lived in that province for 12 months consecutively. So if you've lived in Ontario for 12 months consecutively, then you would apply for OSAP. If you, let's say you did your grades like 7 to 9 in Ontario, and then you moved out of the province, you would apply at your home province.
Okay. Perfect. So those seem to be all the questions that we have at the moment oriented towards awards. Thank you again, Sam, for going through all that amazing information. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. For some of the other questions, kind of like about fee payment and a few other things, we'll be answering them in the next 3 minutes by text. And again, if anyone else has any other questions at the moment, we will be available for the next few minutes, just answering them via text here in the live event Q&A chat. But again, thank you everyone for tuning in to our See You at Home event for today. Again, the other one for tomorrow, for the end of this week, focusing on resources at Carleton, is tomorrow's event on the Paul Menton Center for students with disabilities. And again, feel free to tune into the rest of the month for all of our upcoming incredible events for you to know a bit more about Carleton. Again, you can feel free to check out our website at admissions.carleton.ca to know more about our different programs and services, to see other upcoming events and programs of interest to you on Carleton 360, and be sure to follow us on our social media. The handle is @CarletonFuture to stay up to date with all the amazing info happening here at Canada's Capital University. Thank you everyone again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.